everyone. Welcome to our live masterclass tonight, Protecting Yourself Legally. We have a wonderful guest with us tonight, Shalini Nandan Singh. She is a legal consultant for passionate entrepreneurs. She's going to be talking to us for approximately 20 to 30 minutes or so, and then opening it up to live Q&A. So I'm going to introduce Shalini, and then we're going to pass it over to her so she can speak to you. Shalini is a legal coach and lawyer. She's always loved the law and yearned to work differently from traditional legal practice. Now in coaching and mentoring women in business from startup to whenever, Shalini helps her tribe by using life skills gained from her other life as an entrepreneur in 2 countries, cohabitating in 2 distinct cultures, and lawyering in 2 jurisdictions. Shalini is also a mother, partner, journalist, community worker, spiritual seeker, and self-confessed lover of all things that are based in joy, ease, and grace. For Shalini, happiness in professional life is helping folk to look at their legal challenges as an opportunity for personal and business growth, while providing practical legal support and having fun and learning lots along the way. Thank you so much, Shalini. I'm going to hand it over to you so that we can get started.
I work almost exclusively with people who are from idea to 5 years into their business. And I imagine that, I don't imagine, I know that there's a lot of women and men who are kind of like in their mid-30s, mid-30s onwards, way up to 70, who have chosen a different path from what they had been doing in their earlier years. So it's almost like they've reinvented themselves to another professional path or another, and I don't want to use the word career, because usually they have chosen to leave a career and embark on a new journey that has resulted in them becoming a business person following their heart in a particular field. So it may lead them to running a business from home. It may lead them to becoming a therapist of a particular modality, a coach. You may start producing something, whether it's a food item or whatever. But whatever it is, it's because you've arrived at a point in your life that you're ready to now kind of live your dream, but not in the 6-figure overnight sense, but you're working from the heart. So what actually happens, I found in that, is that so you start your business and you're terribly committed, you're very committed, you educate yourself a lot, you have a lot of resources that are given to you, that you find, that are presented to you, and suddenly you're in business, like you're ready to see clients, you finished your coaching program, or you finished your degree, you finished your certificate, you finished your association requirement, and now you have either been referred clients, or you've run some campaign, whether it's locally, or you've built a social media profile. What is lost in all of that is that in all of that learning, there's very little attention paid to self-advocacy skills that you need in business, that allows you to negotiate, to establish boundaries, to think about how you want to work and show up as a business person. So yes, you cover some of that in marketing, because it's all about authenticity and all of that. But ultimately, once you've got your client, and once you've started working with them, you need to be able to find that place where your business is actually working for you, and you're able to feel comfortable and safe within the business that you've created. So that's where I find my place, really, because a lot of education is actually required. It's subtle education. I don't say that I coach in this area, but it's what comes out of my reason for drafting the documents that I do. So I created a service pretty much like all of you will create services for your businesses based on what I saw as a real, it was a gap in the market that I saw, but it was a target market that I had to kind of wake up. So when I started this line of work or focusing on something like this, people would, there was, you know, that nobody talked about client agreements or business terms and conditions or website legals as a thing. So I kind of had to start the conversation. And so you will find when you set up your services, or indeed if you've already set them up, that much of what you do will be a result of how much work you put into having the conversation and educating your target market to recognize, in fact, that you are able to solve a problem that they even may not be aware that they actually have. And that's where, you know, the nexus lies between advocacy, law, and marketing in the small business arena. So you've given me 20 minutes to talk to you, but it's really but I feel that in this space, with the number of people that are present today, they may, or if you have questions, I'd rather that you just ask them as they come to you, or, you know, if there's a particular topic that you would like me to cover. But certainly I'm curious to know of the people that are present. Is it Karen, Beck, and Janelle? Whether
that's the only people who've got their videos on. So we've actually got Beck, Craig, Janelle, Leah, and Karen here at the moment.
Okay, so which stages? So are you all in startup, or have you started seeing clients? Are you where are you in your journey? Is what I would like to know.
So you can either type your answers into the chat box or just place your hand up on the screen and I'll know to unmute you, or if you know how to unmute yourself, then that's great as well. So you can ask your question. So does anyone have any questions for Shalini at this moment in where you are? I can tell you, Shalini, that there's a couple of people here who are very new in their startup of their business. There are a couple of people who have already started seeing clients.
Right.
And there's a couple of people who are very close to graduation. Leah is not graduated, she's still in training. She's just doing her practical coaching before she gets started. Becky's qualified, Karen is qualified, Janelle is qualified, but they're all in different stages of where they're up to in working with clients.
Okay, so just with Leah then, if you're not, what are you training in, Leah?
She's doing the Holistic Life Coach and Mind Body Practitioner certification.
Yeah. Okay, so upon graduation then, you know, it's in the coaching industry, and I write a lot of agreements for coaches. Really, it's interestingly, I write very few agreements for coaches that have just graduated. Okay, and the reason why I decline, or I say to them, look, you're not ready yet to have a good business agreement, to have a good client agreement. You need to have actually seen clients. It was one thing to do your prac and your you know, your studies and your tutorials, etc., and your moots. In law we call them moots, but you know what I mean, like when you do the practice runs. But actually, when you've left all of that and you've gone home and you've decided, right, I'm going to start offering sessions, or I'm going to start doing workshops, I'm going to start something, how that actually happens depends very much on a lot of other things other than what you learned at college or in your course. Okay, it depends on how you run your life. It depends on where you're working. It depends on the jurisdiction you're in. It depends on who you've decided to serve. Okay, so your agreement very much will depend on a lot of that information, and you simply don't have that until you've seen clients, until you've actually started seeing clients. So in terms of a tip if you will. So because often, you know, I get a lot of inquiry, like I get a lot of people contacting me who have just graduated or have just started. They haven't even seen the first client, but they're all ready to go and they want to have their agreement ready. So I actually counsel them that, no, you are not ready for me. In fact, you're not ready for anything other than being in the right frame of mind and energy to see your clients. However, the thing that I do teach them is at that stage with your first couple of clients, keep a very keep your communications with them online via email very thorough and in writing. So if you're emailing each other, setting up appointments or working out how you're going to work together, just keep a keep a trail of the conversation and try to leave as little as possible to verbal or phone calls or anything like that. Try and keep all the important stuff like how, when, where, why, how much, what people, what expected outcomes are in an email. And that's sufficient in terms of keeping you. It does two things. Firstly, it shows you in hindsight how it is your communications are panning out. Secondly, it does give you a level of sort of like a paper trail gives you a level of protection in that, you can see where agreements occurred and where clarifications were needed, etc. It shows you how well you're communicating or what the process is. So if a client goes on to book and it's a very seamless thing, then you're onto a good thing. But if there was a lot of backwards and forwards and a lot of questions, you are not ready to see a client yet. We need to talk about your processes. You need to go back to your coach perhaps and restructure how you're going to run a session. So after you've seen about 5 or 6 clients, then because you go back and you look at how it's working out for you, right? And from there, you are ready then to say, okay, I now have seen enough people to understand how I can run this business at this time in my business life. Okay, it's not going to stay the same. There's going to be changes. What you do in the first 3 months of your business is going to be vastly different to what you do 12 months down the track. Only because you become smarter, you have more clarity, you get a few knocks, you get a few knockbacks, you get, you are testing. Everything is a practice. So for those of you who are in coaching per se, I would say to you, give yourself a couple of months and then be very strong about having a clear client agreement or business terms and conditions in place. For those who are in therapies, anything that is a health related, so coaching aside, you do have to be mindful of the claims you make and the qualifications you have. Moving forward though, moving away from coaching per se to therapeutic modalities. So if you are going to be a kinesiologist, a naturopath, even an energy healer or an astrologer or any of those, any of the esoteric arts, so to speak, or the health related, anything that could, anyone comes, your client will be coming to you to solve a problem that could be construed as a medical problem, a financial problem, or a legal problem, then your requirements are a little bit different. Okay, so at the start of your practice, at the very least, you need to have a firm disclaimer in place. You also need to have your privacy policy, because you are going to be collecting patient information. You may not be a doctor, but in the therapeutic modalities, when you see a client, the culture or the presentation is very similar to that of a patient. Quite often, a kinesiologist or a naturopath will refer to their patient as opposed to their client. Okay, so you've got to understand that you are collecting information from them that is related to their health and a number of other aspects which appear in the Privacy Act, which is a whole different webinar in itself for therapeutic modalities, that must be shown, that you need to collect the information and follow the privacy protocol, both in your clinic, on the information you collect online, and on your website. So it's startup for people who are moving into therapeutic modalities and practice. That I would say to you, consider very strongly of having your disclaimer in place and your privacy. Your business terms and conditions about how you actually run your sessions, what your patients need to know about scheduling, rescheduling, showing up, not showing up, cancelling, and all of, any of this sort of thing, that can wait until you've seen a few clients and you've worked out how is your business going to fit in with your life. Because as someone who's drafting or reviewing somebody's terms and conditions, these are the questions I'll come back to you with and say, hey, I need to know this because this is what your clients need to know for your business to run smoothly. They don't read your mind, right? So if you are asking them to be your ideal client, you need to teach them to be your ideal client. How you teach them to be your ideal client is that you share the information that will make it easy for them to be your ideal client. And that information is information about how to interact with you, both online and in person, as a one-on-one client, in a group, in a course, whatever. That's where your biggest tool, your single most powerful tool is to both educate your client and to protect your business. So that's really what in the startup world is where the connection lies between running a successful business, advocating for yourself, and keep, educating your clients. There's no such thing as an ideal client. Your ideal client is like your child. You raise your children, you teach them how to be the adults they are. That is what your ideal client is like. You nurture them and you groom them to be your ideal client. They do not just appear. You have to, even with your marketing copy, you are creating the space for them. So how you teach them about your business after they become a client or in preparation to become your client is critical to how long they stay with you, to the quality of the work, to how they speak about you, to how disputes are handled, to how quickly you get paid, and the kind of people that are referred to you. So that this is where where I would urge you to look at where the business of having your legals in place sits in terms of the pillars that you create or you try and build in your business for success. So you have the pillars are you have your financials, you need to have that sorted, you have your marketing, your messaging. These are the pillars of your business, right? But your legals are also an important pillar, and you need to work that into your marketing, into your communications, into your finances, into your structure, into all parts of your business as seamlessly as possible. So, yeah.
It's all about those expectations, clearly communicating those expectations of what do I expect of myself as a professional coach, counselor, teacher, practitioner? What do I expect of my client whilst they're working with me? And what will my client expect of me in return? And am I prepared to meet them on all of those conditions or not? So that's really a lot of things that early startup coaches don't really consider, and we try and get the students to consider as much of that as possible in modules 11 and 12 when they get towards the end, and considering their client agreement. Do they want to charge for a fee if someone doesn't cancels within 24 hours? Are they going to be available 24/7? Will they be available via text on the weekends? It's all those sorts of things that are just as important to weave in there, aren't they?
Yes, I just before coming online, I responded to an existing client of mine who needs a contract amended. Okay, her business model has changed, and she asked me for an undertaking about the amount of time. How soon can I turn it around? And of course, everyone's matter is always urgent. It's the way of my work anyway. And this client knows very well that I have very clear. I have a very clear statement in my terms and conditions around delivery times. Because in the first, and I'll give you an example, in the first instance when she contacted me, she read my terms and conditions and came back to me and she said, you know, I need this. I need this way sooner than what you can deliver. So I emailed her back and I said, look, I understand that how I work is for my own comfort. I need, and my own undertaking and integrity, I don't need to create an expectation in you that's unreasonable for me to meet. Okay, so yes, that's what my terms and conditions say, but you are likely to get it way before, because I want to under promise and over deliver. Okay, because that's how I work. And so and I said, perhaps I'm not the right practitioner for you in this instance, because I'm not prepared to say to you, I'll have it ready for you in 3 days, because I won't. I'm too busy. But she engaged me anyway, because in fact, her expectation, she knew that she was actually, she had the time. More than 3 days. So it was like I required her to be very honest with me about her time expectations. It's not that I won't consider that, but I certainly won't promise, you know, and my terms and conditions are quite clear to that effect. So anyhow, she's come back to me now. It's been now 6 months. And she said to me, when can you do it? And I said, you know my terms and conditions. I said, but you also know you can discuss your deadline with me and I will do everything I can. So I guess what I'm saying to you and why I've told you that particular story is that understand this, your business terms and conditions it's a platform for negotiation for you. It's there to give you space. It's there to give you a place from which to negotiate the best possible outcome for you and for your client. It's not cast in stone. You can set any part of it aside anytime you want. But if something goes wrong, like there's a miscommunication, there's misdelivery, there is a dispute, the courts will say, where's the agreement? Right? They'll say, what did the terms and conditions say? If you don't produce one, then they're forced to rely on he said, she said, we said. Right? And that's dangerous for you as a business person. You want to be able to show any arbitrator, tribunal, mediator that you thought about your business enough, considered your client situation enough, considered your client interaction enough to actually have produced a document to be completely transparent with the client about how things are going to work. And they read that, and it's on that basis that you began working for them. And if there has been a dispute, then you have something to fall back on and to negotiate and work from towards resolving that. So it's really, I think the business terms and conditions, client agreements and policies are really quite undervalued in a business. It's just because you don't use them every day. You in fact use them with every single client, because when looking at it, your obligation is to make it available to a client. There is no requirement that someone actually has to sign it. someone's actions is taken into account to determine whether or not an agreement has been accepted or terms and conditions have been accepted. And you'll know that because you sign up to phone plans and you buy things on, credit and all of this. There's no signing involved. You pay the money and that's considered, or you go ahead with engaging someone. So my terms and conditions, I don't expect people to sign anything. What my terms and conditions say is that I've given you these terms and conditions. By continuing to engage me and sending me your documents, paying my fees, that tells me that you've read them because I've made them available to you in 3 different places, in my quote, in my email signature, and as a link on a hidden page on my website. Okay, so if you didn't read it, that's really not my job to make you read it. My job is to make it available to you. So this is where the education lies, to empower people not to be afraid of putting it out there, because the second objection, or another big objection, is, oh, it'll be a deal breaker if I give my clients my terms and conditions, or it's too long and too lengthy and too hard, they're just going to run away. So, but it doesn't need to be. If they're written properly, then really they're written beautifully and they represent your business, which is, something you should aspire to when you do look at having each of your respective businesses done.
I've just had a private message come in asking about the T's and C's, and it's asking, can Shalini recommend, say, 3 or so must-have critical terms and conditions that should always be included as a minimum?
Within within the document itself?
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So really, it depends on your industry. Okay, so if you're in the therapies, if you're a therapeutic practitioner in a therapeutic modality, then the disclaimer is really important. It's not a term. It's not something that they agree to, but you must put that disclaimer there in addition to your terms and conditions, so that people are aware that they're not to mistake your service for something else or replace your advice for some other, for a mainstream professional representation. But apart from that, it's very important to describe your service very clearly, what it is that you're offering. So there's no mistake about what you're being paid for. Okay, so in your terms and conditions, if your services are described within your document, then you need to be very succinct but clear at the same time that these are the services that I offer, if you're offering multiple services or packages, right? If the service for each client is different, like in my case, I can't list the services in my terms and conditions because every client, well, not everyone, but every other client, I'm doing a different type of legal work or different type of drafting for, so it depends on the client. In which case, my terms and conditions, I just make sure that because it refers to the proposal or the quote, that those documents are extremely clear about what it is I'm offering. The second thing that you need to be very clear about in your terms and conditions as a practitioner in a service-based business, such as the lovely people who are here tonight, whether, as a coach, as a therapist, as a service provider. Like, I consider myself in that zone. I provide a service, not a product. You must be very careful. Not careful from a litigation point of view, but it will lead to problems about your delivery times and the expectations that you build in your clients. And so if you're upfront about that and give it a lot of thought, and give yourself like give the client a realistic indication of how long your lead times are, turnaround times are, review times are, whatever it is that you're doing. That's really important. Okay, so, and that includes like if a client is that goes into like if you're doing sessions and people are showing up for appointments, how you manage late arrivals and all of that is very important, that you state that clearly so that people know that when they get a shorter session because they've shown up late, right, they're not to take it personally. It's not because you don't like them and you're a crappy practitioner. It's because you are a busy professional. And unfortunately, without prior notice, you cannot penalize another client because of you've been late. And I know that doctors do it all the time. You know how we sit around in waiting rooms. But how many of us walk away feeling really pissed off about that? Right? Because you feel your time's not valued. And one thing you never want your client to feel, and I don't care whether you're a neurosurgeon, lawyer, or whatever, is to make your client feel like you don't value their time, because guess what? They won't value yours. Right? So that's something that it's like an energetic thing.
Yeah.
You really have to like create that I guess that space, so that this is the kind of energetic interaction that's happening. So that's number 2. Number 3 is all about payments, refunds, and cancellations. You need to cover those in your T's and C's really clearly. It doesn't matter what modality whether you're a therapist, a energy healer, a coach, a lawyer, doctor, tinker, tailor, soldier, whatever. At the end of it, we're in business because people pay us money to do something, right? That's the whole. You may do some of it for free. You may start off doing some of it for free, but ultimately, okay, pretty soon down the track, it's about an exchange of money. And that is where you want to have transparency. You want your clients to know exactly what the process is. You want your clients to know what happens if the transaction doesn't go through, like so the session doesn't happen, there's a cancellation. So these things are governed by quite 90% of it. There's laws, consumer laws in relation to how refunds, cancellations, and client obligations are managed. Okay, so they need to be reflected in your client agreement or your business terms and conditions, and your business terms and conditions either have to comply or exceed. You cannot fall short. All right, so either you comply with what is required by consumer law, or you go over and above. So by over and above means you can, for example, you will refund, no questions asked, for any reason whatsoever. Okay, but consumer law says you don't have to refund just because someone changes their mind. There actually has to be a defect or a reason, right? So that's where, so you've got to understand your clients, your target market out there have their own ideas of how a refund, cancellation, reschedule should happen, right? If you want them to, if you would like them to be your client and your ideal client, then please tell them this is how it'll happen when you are in business with me. If it's something that doesn't quite agree with you, tell me about it and I'll see if I can adjust it, because you want to be able to accommodate people. But if you don't have the document in the first place, what are you going to work from? Okay, yeah. So to that person who asked what are the 3 main things, describe the scope of your work very clearly. Just make sure that you describe your delivery times and client, your expectations of what's going to happen very clearly. and all about the money. Make sure anything in relation to payments, refunds, and cancellations are very clearly expressed. If you are in an industry that has IP related issues, so if you're a designer, photographer, any of this, very important that you have that covered as well. Copyright, who owns it?
Yes, there's another question that's just come in here. Is it necessary to put a copyright statement on your website? Isn't it your own writing already copyright by law? There's a lot of students, Shalini, who are into blogging, and there's a lot of them who blog regularly on their own websites. And there's also a lot of students who want to create online courses. So I think this is what you just said in point 3, particularly about T's and C's, money, refunds. That's a big thing for, I know for a lot of people who create online courses and don't have that very, very clear. There's quite a few business groups that I'm in. I know that you're in one that I'm in as well. And I often see different coaches and practitioners asking questions to the group. I've got this person who's purchased my course. They're having some issues with it, or they've just simply changed their mind. What should I do? So they haven't even really thought about that before they've offered the course, and it doesn't seem like they've got any terms and conditions in place, particularly about refunds. So in relation to the copyright statement on the website, what would you say to that? Is that a necessary thing for bloggers?
So are you asking, so you've got a website and you are uploading your blogs?
Well, this person hasn't said anything about the blogs particularly, just is it necessary to put a copyright statement on your website? Isn't your own writing already copyright by law?
It is, but if your blog is being shared from your website, then it pays to have a copyright notice on it. Now, if there is a dispute, okay, so if you don't have the copyright statement on it and someone takes a little bit of what you've written, you know, like change something, a little bit of it around, but the bulk of it is very similar to what you've written, the copyright statement, the little sign serves as a reminder and a deterrent. Okay, it does not stop someone from copying you, but it's a funny animal. People say, well, if it's your, why do people copy? If what I've created is copy, you can't. That's human nature. You cannot stop people from taking your stuff and do it. I mean, it happens to me all the time. If you work a certain way, that's what happens. So to the person who's asked about, do I need to put a copyright sign on a blog? You don't need to, right? You don't need to do that at all. But by doing so, you are to some extent protecting your work and saying that copyright does concern you, and here's the little symbol that says I'm aware of it. And so even on your website, you'll often see, even with the website templates, if you're building your own, there's always, the little copyright and whose website it is, because it's a deterrent. If you really wanted to, of course, protect IP, you would get it trademarked. And that's another thing which I say to people in startup, there is such a thing as common law trademark, where you establish ownership by just by usage, and then you go ahead and trademark. It's not like you wake up on day one of your business, unless your idea is particularly unique and fantastic, that you would consider trademarking first. Often you need to prove the business idea first. So sorry, Vicky, what was the other question that lady had?
I think the second part of that was, isn't your own writing already copyright by law?
Yeah, it is already copyright, but how do you know that if there is the danger that if you don't put that on yours, people will think you could have ripped it off from somewhere else?
Yeah, and I've actually been in that position where people have actually taken the bulk of an article I've pre-written, and I've discovered it on a whole complete different website that's was written by somebody else, and I've just very nicely sent them the original just directly to them, and just pointed out a lot of this is very similar and has been taken directly from here, and that's been good. That's got a good response. But I do remember there was a girl I did business school with a couple of years ago. She had paid a lot of money for a beautiful website, and she had actually had one of her course students point out that someone else had completely taken her colors, her wording, and her format, her style on a brand new website that was this other person's business. And she was just shattered. She
Yes.
was so upset. She actually
Yes.
started from scratch all over again.
Yeah.
It was just too much to even confront that girl.
Yeah,
It
and
was
unfortunately, it's every person is different. Their level of resilience is different. Their level of confrontation is different. Their level of taking on risk is different. Um, you know, it's part of the journey of being in business. At some point, you will look at your own work and you'll start to own it. And when you start to own it, you will start looking at ways of educating people that are likely to come into contact with your business, that you value your work, and you're aware, like you do see what goes on if your work is duplicated elsewhere. I had a conversation with a stylist today that I'm in a mastermind group with. We're all peer businesses. And she said that, she's considered an industry expert now. She's been in business 5 years. And she notices people, other young up and coming stylists, they, especially through Instagram, use a lot of her copy and has her little different kind of styling quirks and whatever. And she asked me, she said, what shall I do? I said, if you become an industry expert, the way to get around this sort of stuff, the best way is to start educating. So she needs to start teaching the younger stylists how to behave, what the etiquette is, what the protocol is, why it's not good to rip off an established stylist's work, how it's the quickest way not to get a mentor. Because when you become an industry expert, you go beyond your business. You become like people look up to you. And it's a place where I think as a business owner, especially with the way marketing is these days, if you're good at what you do, eventually in your own little niche, how you show up in business, what you do become a kind of like a go-to person for a particular thing.
Mm.
And when you become that, then you do have an obligation to be someone that leads by education and example, as opposed to everything just being business. And that's, I really believe that and that's how I guess you expand your reach organically. People get to know you for something other than just what it is that people pay you fees for. And that's very powerful. I'm coming around to thinking that's possibly the most powerful way of marketing, of achieving a sort of, that's how you look back and say, well, actually, I'm influencing those coming behind me. I think that's a real measure of success than actually having made the $100,000 in 6 weeks from doing a course. That the six-figure thing that I keep hearing and want to put my head in a paper bag when I hear that.
Yeah, because the other thing is a level of success. Success means different things to different people. I think it's a wonderful success that I'm still in business, coaching, offering therapy and coaching 7 years later.
Yes.
And still inspiring and motivating people to, live their dreams and make their life something extraordinary. So that to me is a level of success, regardless of how much.
Absolutely. So to the question of copyright then, so, it's a funny animal. You will always be, if you're good at what you do, people will watch you. And there'll always be people that will want the easy way out. So you'll feel that you did all the hard work and they're the ones that are. So that's it. That's when your journey about resilient, in business, that's when you start building resilience, when you start looking beyond your business, when you start doing personal development and you start realizing the extent of your ability to self-advocate. And self-advocacy does not mean getting up and having fights with people. It means standing in your truth and deciding what's important, picking your battles. And sometimes, you know, you don't fight a battle with warring words. Sometimes you fight a battle with loving words. Sometimes you create the greatest change with education instead of litigation. So these are the things that is part of the business journey that starts very early. It starts at startup, and if you're aware of it at startup and you progress and you make, you know, you have some idea that you are heading, well, one day, okay, you'll stop being a startup. You will become a grown-up business. Startup is a temporary state, and don't ever fall into the trap of permanently considering yourself a startup, which I think is a bit of a thing, because I often see, oh my God, that person's been in business 5 years. They still think they're in startup. You're not in startup. If you're still feeling like you're a startup at 5 years, change your coach.
Yeah.
Do something, because you know you get, if 3 years you need to start thinking like a grown-up in business. Sorry, that's a bit of a rant, but I didn't mean it to be like that.
That's great. Now I've got another question. Let me just backtrack a little bit to find it. Okay, here we go. So, okay, so this is quite relevant actually, because we are approved in the industry from IICT, the
Yes.
International Institute for Complementary Therapists, and they're of course operating in 26 countries. So this person's asking, are there any considerations for a coach when they are coaching a person online who resides in Australia versus coaching a person online who resides, let's say, in Japan? So that's just an example.
Yes.
It could be someone from New Zealand or the UK or
the US or Lithuania, for all we know. Yeah.
Does the client agreement need to consider different terms for different countries?
No. Look,
it's the originating country, isn't it?
Yes,
offering the service.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to have one, because you want your client, wherever they are, to understand that working with you is governed by the laws of the country that your business is, of the state that your business is registered in. So if there is ever a dispute, and this is really important, they must bring it. So if you're in New South Wales and you're seeing a client in Hawaii, then they must understand they're working with you on the condition that if they have an issue, it will need to be resolved in New South Wales. You will not go to Hawaii to resolve it. Okay, so to the lady or the gentleman that asked that question, there is no issue. If you have a client agreement or your business terms and conditions clearly state that the law governing the interaction is that of the state where your business is registered in. Not located, because businesses are located all around the world. It's where your business identity is lodged or originates.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions that I've had from people who aren't on camera who just wanted to message those to me. So
Beautiful.
Is there any questions from anybody else?
They're very quiet.
Normally the ones who are on here for live group coaching are a bit boisterous. So Beck and Janelle, you're on camera at the moment. Do either of you have any questions? Because you're actually students of the old holistic counsellor and meditation therapist course. You've both reached a level of diploma now, and Beck, you're going for advanced diploma. So you're a little bit different to the holistic life coaches, but do you have any questions that you're worrying about that you haven't thought about that maybe Shalini's actually pointed out and you're sort of suddenly having a bit of insight or aha as to what you might need to start doing? Did you want to unmute, Beck? Go for it.
I don't really have any questions. I think once I really get started, I have a good base, I think, to get started. And then once I really do get started, then maybe one or two things might come up. But at this stage, I think I have a bit of an idea know how to proceed at least.
With the meditation, anything that's, so it just depends on how you run your business. If there's a workshop or you're running online sessions or one-on-one coaching around meditation, you know, your terms and conditions don't have to be extensive, but you do need to have something that lets the client know what the deal is with working with you. And that's just good business practice for everybody. It's interesting how many people don't ask for client agreements or business terms and conditions. You know, even that, as a business owner, if you can develop the habit of asking for those, then you're advocating for yourself because you're educating yourself about what you're getting into. And so if a business turns around and says to you, no, I don't have any, that should be a sort of like a flag for you. Well, how long have you been in business? And why don't you have them? You know, how do people know how to work with you or what you do? It's really very, very interesting. And then the more people that ask for these, the more people will have them. And they're not like meant to tie you up and red tape you. They're meant to be a tool to be able to navigate business relationships, where most of us are creatives. You know, I hated the thought of having them. I really struggled with it. I never wanted to have them. I don't even know why I became a lawyer, to be honest, because it's just wrapped up in paperwork unbelievably. I think it's a bit of a soul lesson, soul contract type experience in this embodiment type thing happening for me. But having said that, I now say it like it is, and it's very liberating. And just for the record, I think my terms and conditions don't exceed a page. Mind you, I've written some that are like 10 pages, but my personal one doesn't exceed a page. So yeah, so thank you for that.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Leah, Craig, who aren't on camera, do you have any questions? Karen had to go, she's in a different time zone. Okay, I don't think so. Okay, all right. Well, unless there's anything else, like famous last words, you know, wise words to share with everybody.
Yes, I do actually. I tell, well, when I teach a lot, this is what I love doing. And my thing is that you just start your business. You'll never have everything covered. Change is inevitable, and change is your only constant. So just start your business and learn to roll with the punches. And, you know, the agreements and the T's and C's are just your little helping hand and your friend, to help you roll with those punches. They're not going to take them away, and they're not going to stop people from, you know, they're not going to stop your development. Like, they're not going to cover everything so that it's going to be cushy for you all the time. Life experience doesn't work that way, and business is part of life experience. So my message, or my love message to all of you, is to just start your beautiful businesses and review it in 3 months and get something down on paper so that you actually have a work in progress that, you know, eventually will be the piece of paper that you're proud of.
Great advice. Excellent. Okay, I think we might call it a night. We've made our hour perfectly. That's great timing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing the hour with us and sharing your wisdom and really great information. Leah says thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm absolutely sure that all the students who are here, and plus the many that will watch the replay, I'm sure, will get so much value out of tonight. And it really sparks some insight for things that we haven't covered in our last couple of modules with the client agreement template and the referral for terms and conditions and things that we have there. Hopefully it'll just get them to start thinking a little bit more in depth and also relaxing a little bit, to not feel like they've got to have everything perfect or everything set up, and absolutely just so before they can actually just get started and get into the rhythm and the flow of working with clients and finding out what works for them and how they want their business to serve them while they're serving their clients.
Yeah, it's not something that should be driven by fear. Okay. It's a part of life. It's a part of business life. You work it in and you need to be ready to work it in. So if I could not do this work if that's what I was engendering in my people, which is, do this because something terrible will happen. Some terrible things happen regardless of, no matter what things you put in place, right? In life, that's what it's like. So it's how your head and heart's operating, and that feeling that you've done your best. And one of the things of doing your best is being transparent and saying, right, I put it out there that this is how I was doing business, and I gave it thought, and that's and usually that's enough. You attract the people that you the energy that you put out is what you get back. And I personally, as a practitioner, I don't want frightened, terrified clients. I want clients who are ready to work with me. So that is what I teach. Get ready to, be ready for these places in your business, or these times when you have to up level, move from being a hobby to a business, from being an idea to a business, from being a startup to being a business person, from just being in third year to actually saying, right, I'm actually a fully fledged business now. And with that comes a certain amount of responsibility and conduct requirements. And so I'm willing to rise up to that and actually meet my clients halfway.
Yeah, great advice. Craig has said, I like that. Be transparent and be yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I'm going to do is put your details back up on the screen, Shalini. So if you wouldn't mind, would you like to let people know how they can get in touch with you? And I'll put the actual visual up on the screen. But I know on your website you have a couple of very helpful templates. I
don't have templates. I eventually will, but I do have worksheets.
The guidelines, aren't they?
To get you ready for your client agreements and T's and C's. And look, my business name is Legally Shalini. You can just find me on the website, or which is also legallyshalini.com.au. I have a Facebook page as well under the same name. And Vicky's got my email address. You can always find me through her. So I'm really happy to talk to any one of you who, would like a discussion. Before I became a lawyer, I was a journalist and I worked in marketing, which is why I have a bit of an understanding of the entrepreneur journey and experience as well. So I tend to come at it, more often from that perspective, and then throw the legals in just for good measure. So
excellent. Thank you so much again for being a part of tonight and for sharing your experience and ideas and wisdom with all the students. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.